So good old Joe, his first day in office, he signed a bunch of executive orders. This one, I've talked about this in the past in terms of different cases that have happened around the U.S. You had the Soule case in Connecticut. Her and a few other high school teammates of hers had filed suit because in a particular track meet, they were prevented from going to the regionals because individuals who were born male took the top two spots in that track and field event which they were competing. So that knocked two girls out of the opportunity to go on to a regional final event in New England. So Biden, here's the title, someone's opinion here in the title, of course. So much for unity. Biden sparks outrage after signing divisive executive order, pushing schools to include trans athletes in girls' sports, causing critics to declare that the new president is erasing women. Now, this is something that's been coming from the left for quite some time. And as we already know, it's the victimhood pyramid, they call it, or kind of like the hierarchy of victimhood. It's on that particular side of the aisle who is at the top of the pyramid or the totem pole or whatever you'd want to call it. So when it comes to certain individuals' rights, those rights are superseded based on your, we'll say the number of victimhood points you can collect. And they're based on all sorts of characteristics, mostly related to gender, identity, race. So in this case, obviously we know on the victimhood scale, the trans individual sits higher on that pyramid than just a female does. That's their thing. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. It's just the way they do it on that side of the aisle. I would say that based on what it seems like in the media, the old adage goes, I'm sure you've heard this, that show me who I can't criticize, and that'll tell me who has the power. So that's how you look at it when you look at the pyramid, right? It's who can we not say anything about? Who can we not challenge? They would just tell you, oh, you're a phobic of this, or that, or all of them. But let's take a look at a couple different things first, and then we'll come back to this. ACLU wants to erase male, female sexes from ID documents at X. Well, you look at the title, and then you're like, they want to erase male and female altogether and add X? So then we're all just going to be X. That's the way the title sounds. The ACLU is jumping on the Biden administration's embrace on day one of the trans ideology by seeking to make identification documents include X as a category for one sex, X sex. Trans and non-binary people belong, and we need IDs that accurately reflect who we are so we can travel, apply for jobs, and enter public establishments without risk of harassment or harm, the ACLU website says in a text titled, They the People. The ACLU has filed 6 cases on behalf of trans people seeking an accurate ID. Nearly 20 states already have self-attestation and an X designation on IDs. ACLU said, We are asking the Biden-Harris administration to issue an executive order to make it easier for trans and non-binary people to have accurate IDs. One question, though, backing up here, they say here that they want to have this to enter public establishments without risk of harassment or harm. Doesn't that just seem like a little bit of an overkill? Even if you're a trans person watching this, doesn't that seem like a bit of a, you're just kind of throwing it out there to get sympathy on your side? Because what public establishment do you really have to enter where you show an ID? Sure, there's some, right? You have to go into a bar, but that's more about your age, right? It's not about your sex or your gender. So the question I have would be, and we're just talking about this little piece of things, but what establishment do you have to enter where you have to show your ID to prove you're a certain sex? Perhaps there's something out there. I just can't think of anything off the top of my head. So if anybody has something, let me know. Now, with that said, 20 states already have this, according to this article. Not going to fact check that. I'll assume it's true. The question I have, and what I've always had, because I don't really delve into the whole trans thing, be that the mental side of it or the physical side of it, I stay away from it. I don't want to have anything to do with that discussion. But the way it's said is they say, okay, this person, if they were a male and they identify as a female, they are now a trans woman. And the inverse is true, obviously. If somebody was born a woman and they believe they're a man, then they are a trans male, right? How they see themselves in their eyes. So that always leads to the end result being one of two, right? You can attach a title, trans male or trans female, to it, but they would have the option to select either male or female, correct? Those two choices are already there. It's not like you're creating something that they're saying that they aren't already. But with that said, though, if 20 states already have this, and they're looking to just simply add the X designation, but you already have male, female as a choice, and then you're adding X, it's not what the title said, right? Because the title said this: ACLU wants to erase male, female sexes from ID documents. Add X. The title's misleading. It's clickbait, right? They're not looking to erase anything. They're looking to add a third thing. Trans athlete sues USA Powerlifting for not allowing him to compete in women's division. This is from Breitbart. Obviously, it's right-leaning, so that's why they referred to this person as a him. I think if this were a left-leaning site, they would just say, well, they're not allowing this woman to compete in women's sports, right? So here's this individual here, powerlifter, is a man who is now living as a trans woman, is suing the largest US-based powerlifting organization for not allowing him to compete in the women's division. And this was actually January 15th. So about a week before Biden put out the executive order. This was Soule. I had referenced her at the beginning of the video. I had done a couple videos about this in the past, and I'll go ahead and put links to those at the beginning of the video, so you can check any of those videos out if you're interested. As I was saying, her and a couple of the other girls had filed this lawsuit because they felt there were some individuals that had an unfair advantage in the competition that had cost them an opportunity to go further. And what I was talking about in those videos was what happens when you have a situation where these individuals who are born male, who are now considered trans females, that they start taking athletic opportunities away from young girls and women. How does that fight go? Who stands for biological women? Because, like I talked about in those other videos as well, I was saying, men, we can say what we want, but this isn't a fight that anybody's going to want to hear what we have to say. We'll automatically be dismissed as phobic or the ism or any other kind of insult they want to throw our way. So you have individuals, like J.K. Rowling, for instance. They call her a TERF. So it's, again, the victimhood hierarchy, right? Women have generally enjoyed a place a lot higher up on the hierarchy when trying to get those victimhood points. And in a lot of cases, it's been valid. There have been a lot of instances in the past. We don't see that today now because they actually get preferred status most of the time. But in the past, it hasn't been that way. So to have them on top of the hierarchy, it's probably been justified in a lot of ways, especially when it comes to sexual discrimination, things like that in the workplace. Fortunately, the wage gap is pretty much non-existent now. There is a wealth gap. The wage gap is pretty much non-existent, and non-existent in terms of when all the other factors are taken out. I believe what I saw recently was that women's earnings, when every other variable is factored in, that it's 98 cents to the dollar. So now women live in a time where equality is there. Women make up 60% of individuals in college seeking degrees, and that's where it's at. Degrees, college degrees, and that's how you advance your career, take it to the next level. And I even saw something recently where they were talking about how women now, this is within the last 5 to 10 years or so, that women now, if you look at their wages, they're actually outpacing men. That with all other variables removed, they're pretty much equal. That when, as a female, you go into a job, that you're going to get paid the same as a male would. And that's good. Equality achieved. But in this case with Selena, even though it held her back in 2018 and 19 when these things were going on, I saw this on her Twitter. Research. I tell you, it's research. She's actually going to run in college at the University of Charleston. That's in South Carolina. So good for her. Pardon if some of this is cut off here. This is the Alphabet Nation. Again, they have their own agenda separate from that of women. Or J.K. Rowling getting back to feminists versus trans, right? It's the next ground of culture war that women and men now have equality. As I pointed to, the college system, the family court system, you could probably cite things where men would have an advantage as well, but that battle now, it's not men and women anymore. Well, I guess I should say that one's still going on between some of the grosser feminist SJ types who still think things aren't equal, who still want more power. But this is another phase of the battle. Two groups that, one, as I was saying previously, is used to sitting at the top of the hierarchy in terms of victimhood. Now you have the up-and-coming contender try to take the crown. So obviously with the Alphabet Nation website, they're looking to advocate for certain individuals. They aren't looking to advocate for straight women. They're looking to advocate for women that fall under their umbrella. So it says here, Montana advances bill to ban trans girls. That's the part that's cut off from the side there, from competing in high school sports. And this actually came out on the 21st, which was the day after Biden signed the executive order.